When it comes to typing Python code, you have two options. You can use a code editor or an IDE, which is short for Integrated Development Environment. An IDE is basically a code editor with some fancy features like auto-completion, which means as you type code, this feature helps you complete your code, so you don't have to type every character by hand. It's a productivity boosting feature. It also gives you additional features like debugging, which means finding and fixing bugs in your programs, testing, and so on. For both code editors and IDEs, there's so many options out there. The most popular code editors are VS Code, Atom, and Sublime. You can use the code editor that you prefer. In terms of the IDEs, again, there are so many options out there. The most popular one is PyCharm. In this course, I'm going to use VS Code or Visual Studio Code because that's my favorite code editor. Later in the course, I will show you how to install a plugin or an extension that will convert VS Code to a powerful IDE. So before going any further, head over to code.visualstudio.com and download the latest version of VS Code. Now with VS Code open, on the top, from the File menu, go to Open, and somewhere on your disk, create a new folder. Let's call this folder Hello World. And then open it. Beautiful. Now click this icon on the top. This opens up the Explorer panel. In this panel, you can see all the files and folders in your project. So let's add a new file and call that app.py. So all our Python files should have the py extension. Press enter. Now let's close this and type a bit of Python code. In this lecture, we're going to use one of the built-in functions in Python called print. So in Python, we have a lot of built-in functions for performing various kinds of tasks. For example, as a metaphor, think of the remote control of your TV. On this remote control, you have a bunch of functions like turn on, turn off, change the channel, change the volume, and so on. These are the built-in functions in your TV. We have the same concept in Python and many other programming languages. So one of these built-in functions that comes with Python is print. And we can use this to print something on the screen. Now, whenever you want to use a function, you should open and close parentheses. In programming, we say we're calling the print function. Calling a function means executing it. Now let's display the Hello World message on the screen. Whenever you want to work with text, you should put your text in between quotes, either double quotes or single quotes. Now I'm going to go with double quotes and add hello world, and then put a happy Persian cat here. Beautiful. Save the changes with Command and S on Mac or Control and S on Windows. Now to execute this code, we need to go back to Command Prompt on Windows or Terminal on Mac. But the good news is that we don't have to switch programs. Here in VS Code, we have an integrated terminal. So press Control and backtick. That is the key before number 1 on your keyboard. That is just below the escape button. So this is our integrated terminal. Now if you're on Windows, type Python. If you're on Mac or Linux, type Python 3. And next to that, add the name of our file. That is app.py. And here's our hello world message in the terminal. Beautiful. Now let's take this to the next level and make it a little bit more interesting. Let's close this terminal window by pressing Control and backtick and add a second line of code. So one more time, print. This time, let's add quotes with a star in between them. Now let's say we want to repeat this star 10 times. So here we can multiply this by 10, save the changes, open up the terminal, and run our program. And you can see this star is repeated 10 times. So as you see, the instructions in our program are executed from top to bottom in order. In the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to convert this VS Code to a powerful IDE for building Python applications. In this lecture, I'm going to show you how to convert VS Code to a powerful IDE by using an extension called Python. With this extension or plugin, we get a number of features such as linting, which basically means analyzing our code for potential errors. We also get debugging, which involves finding and fixing errors. We'll look at this later in the course. We also get auto-completion, which basically helps us write code faster so we don't have to type every character. We get code formatting, which is all about making our code clean and readable, just like how we format our articles, newspapers, books to make them clean and readable. We get unit testing, which involves writing a bunch of tests for our code. We can run these tests in an automated fashion to make sure our code is behaving correctly. And finally, we get code snippets, which are reusable code blocks that we can quickly generate so we don't have to type them all by hand. Now, don't worry about memorizing any of these. As we go through the course, you're going to learn about these features. Now, here in VS Code, on the left side, click this icon. This opens the Extensions tab. So these are the extensions that we can install in VS Code to bring in additional functionality. Here under the Recommended tab, you can see the Python extension. If you don't see this, simply type Python here on the top. And here's the extension. So go ahead and install this. And then you will have to reload VS Code. Now here on the bottom right corner, you can see this message, linter pylint is not installed. So as I told you before, linting is about finding potential errors in our code. Linter is a program or a tool that analyzes our code and finds these potential problems. Now for Python, there are several linters out there. Pylint is one of the most popular ones that this Python extension uses by default. So we need to go ahead and install Pylint as well. Now to do this, first we need to change our Python environment. So if you look here on the bottom left corner, you can see the current Python that is used in VS Code. That is Python 2.6.9 on my machine. Chances are you see a different version here. So click here, and in this list, make sure to select Python 3.7. So this changes our Python environment to Python 3.7, and then we can install Pylint by clicking this button. Okay, Pylint is installed. Beautiful. In the next lecture, I will show you how linting works.